welcome our viewers. Thank you for joining us at our webinar today, Lock Ransomware Out, Keep Data Safe with Veeam and Cloudian. Joining us today are Steve Fermace, Solution Architect at Veeam, and Amit, the Director of Solutions at Cloudian. Welcome, Steve and Amit. And with that, I will hand it over to Amit.
Thank you, Jen. Hello, folks. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you guys are. We are here to talk about ransomware, and to begin with, I wanted to get into a little high-level overview of what ransomware really is. And for that, I wanted to show you guys what it actually feels like to be hit by ransomware. And it feels just like that. Your screen is taken over, your data is locked, and you are pretty much held hostage for your data. So ransomware is the fastest growing malware threat that targets all users everywhere in the world today. How it works is it encrypts user data and renders the source data and or the backup data itself useless. And the ransomware holders will hold your data to hostage till you actually pay the ransom. And these payments are usually demanded in untraceable cryptocurrencies and the likes. So why should you care about ransomware? Why does it matter to you? Now, ransomware strikes a business every 14 seconds. Recent examples of ransomware include the city of Atlanta that was held for ransom for $2.6 million. The Colorado Department of Transportation, they had to pay $1.5 million in ransom. And then more recently, in January of 2020, you had Travelex, the largest foreign exchange company, that was held for $6 million. More than just the ransom, these organizations had their businesses disrupted for weeks. They caused millions more in lost business, and the damage to the reputation wasn't even measured here, right? Ransomware today is the top 5 risk to world economy, according to the Davos World Economic Forum of 2019. You have more than 4,000 attacks per day. You have 97% increase in the past 2 years in ransomware attack. 51% of the companies that were attacked actually had to pay the ransom to get their businesses back. $8 billion in business cost in 2018 alone. And an average cost per attack is in excess of $130,000 US. And this amount is actually growing as the ransomware attacks get more and more sophisticated. So how do you actually typically prevent ransomware? So the solution to this has typically been quite easy. It's all about backup. Okay. Consumers and businesses, if they have good backups, have typically been able to restore the clean copy and get around these attacks. However, even the hackers are aware that these are very, very simple ways to work around these kind of attacks. Now, 75% of the organizations that were attacked last year had up-to-date endpoint protections in place, but the rogue actors were still getting through, right? They're getting more and more sophisticated, and they're going after your backup systems as well, right? It all starts with a phishing attack where you have one of your employees or a user unsuspectingly clicking on a link, which allows rogue actors to circumvent detailed security systems, robust firewalls, and what have you, and then the data systems become compromised. This includes your backup systems, which are compromised, and then guess what? Your entire business operations are at stake. Data is encrypted, and then you cannot access your business critical data, and you're at the mercy of the ransom holder. So how do you actually stop ransomware in today's world, right? So if you look at the 4 technologies for ransomware protection, as pointed out by Forrester, one of the most important aspect of ransomware protection, according to them, in addition to backup, is a worm-enabled storage, which can actually keep your backup data safe, right? And backup to a worm storage target is key to ransomware protection, according to analysts and of the likes of Forrester. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve, who's going to go over some of the key aspects of Veeam and how they help with all of this. Steve?
Thanks, Amit. Good day, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. As Amit said earlier, backup is the way to solve this problem. That's what Veeam does. So let me start by introducing Veeam. So we were founded in 2006, and since then, Veeam has become the global leader in data protection. Today, we have more than 365,000 customers worldwide, over 66,000 channel partners, offices in more than 30 countries, I believe. We're number 1 market share in EMEA, number 4 worldwide. Last year, we had $1 billion in revenue. We also saw double-digit growth last year. We also have over 170 top industry awards. But I think most important, we have a net promoter score of 75, which is over 3.5 times the industry average. So if you talk to any Veeam customers, check our forums, they're very happy with us. So as I said, we've been around for a while, and ever since we came out, we've been constantly evolving our product to meet the needs of our customers. So again, if you go to our forums, you'll see tons of requests from customers, things that they request that we make our product better. Also, we check what's going on in the industry. But again, as you see the chart, year over year, quarter after quarter, we're constantly evolving. And actually, last week we came out with our latest iteration in this evolution process, which is version 10. In version 10 of our backup, we have over 150 product enhancements. So at the core of this success for our backups is this Veeam Cloud Data Management Platform. This platform is built on, as I said, our industry-leading backup solution, which provides backup recovery, cloud mobility, monitoring, analytics, orchestration, automation, governance, and compliance for all of our customers' data. So quickly going through these options, backup recovery, pretty much what it says, right? This is the ability for our customers to protect their data and recover it from system failures, outages, cyber attacks, ransomware. Cloud mobility, the ability to protect, restore, migrate workloads across any cloud or platform. Monitoring and analytics, pretty self-explanatory. Orchestration automation, leverage your backup data to unlock business value so we can actually automate your disaster recovery process. And lastly, governance and compliance. So we have a feature in the backup application, you see it there, called Data Labs. And this is a virtual lab that we can fire up, take your backup data, load it in there, and go through and run things to verify, let's say ransomware. So we'll go through the examples later, but let's say you want to do a restoration because of a ransomware attack. How do you know when you had your last safe backup? So you can go back, restore your environment into this Data Labs, run some tools over it, and verify that it is clean before you restore it back into production. So our Cloud Data Management Platform, it's a complete solution across, we have a whole ecosystem of partners. And one of the partners is Cloudian. And Cloudian is one of our valued technical alliance partners. They're part of the Veeam Ready program, which is a program we have that validates our targets for our backups. And Cloudian passed the Veeam Ready object, so they are a verified target to use for object storage. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we're constantly enhancing our product to meet customer needs. And this slide to show that not all of those customer needs necessarily are, technology-based, right? A lot of the problems that we're solving are environmental or business-related. And as you can go through the list, we have, virtualization, right? Multiple hypervisor support. We have multiple cloud support, multiple public cloud support, on-site support. We have snapshot integration with a lot of our storage partners. Those are some really good examples of how Veeam, adopted and enhanced our product to meet our customer needs. So another example of one of these customer needs that we've enhanced our product in version 10 for is ransomware, right? As Amit just explained, this is one of the hottest topics that we've heard over the last year or so, and it drove us to modify our solution to address this concern. So with Veeam, in order to recover from a ransomware attack, we recommend you follow the 3-2-1 rule of backups. This rule is pretty straightforward. It states you need to have three different copies of your data, 2 copies which are in different media types, and 1 copy which is off-site. And additionally, it's great to have backups, but what if you can't restore them without errors, you have a problem. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the ability through this data labs with features we call Sure Backup and Sure Replica, which allow us to verify your recoverability to make sure that everything's looking good before you actually have to do a restoration. Now, to further guarantee your recoverability from ransomware attacks, though, you want to have one of those copies of the data to be offline or air-gapped. Now, prior to version 10, when we would recommend an air-gapped solution, our first choice, let's say tape, as air-gapped as you can get, right? It's probably off-site in some case, in some vaults, and some off-site storage. Can't be accessed by ransomware. Second choice could be replicated VMs. Have your virtual machines replicated to a secondary site, and most importantly, have them powered off, so they can't be accessed. Primary storage snapshots. So again, I mentioned our ability to orchestrate storage snapshots with our partners. This allows to have a snapshot created, which isn't as easily accessible as if the data is sitting on a file system. Veeam Cloud Connect, another good option. Cloud Connect is one of our abilities to send data to our cloud providers, and it's sent off using a different API set and different authentication. So again, much more difficult for the ransomware to get to. And lastly is rotating hard drives. So very much like tape, when the drives are powered off, you can't get to them. But to make things very easy, in version 10, we came up with immutability. So again, like I said, this came out last week. What is this immutability? The immutability is a feature that prohibits the deletion of blocks of data from the object storage by making them immutable. How do we do that? By using the object lock APIs provided by Amazon and implemented by Cloudian. And once turned on, immutability prevents the deletion of the backup data and any of the associated metadata from the object storage until the expiration of this metadata, the expiration of the immutability is met. I'll show you how we set that up in a few minutes. So as I mentioned, we came up with this immutability in version 10, but prior to version 10, last January actually, with version 9.5.4, we introduced what we call Cloud Tier. And this is our repository or ability to send backup data to object storage repositories. And when we implemented this last January, Cloud Tier was implemented using what we call move mode. Move mode, as it sounds, allows chunks of data to be pruned out of your Veeam backup files that are stored in your performance tier and move them into the object storage. Now, this makes the move mode perfect for offloading data from your more expensive performance tier disk to less expensive object storage. The problem is it doesn't satisfy the 3-2-1 rule, because with the 3-2-1 rule, you need to have your 3 copies of the data. Well, in this case, the data either exists on the performance tier or it exists in the object storage. It doesn't exist both. So in version 10, we introduced what we call the copy mode. Now this feature immediately copies the Veeam backup file to the object storage as soon as it's been created in the performance tier. So this redundant copy now satisfies the 3-2-1 rule. Now, Amit, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. That was a great description of Veeam and the Veeam availability suite. Now we'll discuss a little bit about Cloudian and how the entire solution comes together for ransomware protection. So quick plug for Cloudian. So meet Cloudian and meet HyperStore specifically, which is our flagship product. So what we have here is an on-premises S3 compatible object storage And this is built natively on the Amazon S3 APIs. So not a lot of people are aware that S3, AWS S3 is really a storage product by Amazon built on based on the S3 API. So what Cloudian is an on-premises version of a similar storage offering that can enable customers to create their own storage pools on premises. This is specifically built to service all S3 compatible workloads, and we also have a file interface to the same. Now, the core capabilities of HyperStore are to store unstructured data and to scale in the exabyte scalability range. With HyperStore, customers can start small as 3-node cluster, which is typically in the range of 100 terabytes raw, and scale up to hundreds of petabytes. We, in fact, have customers live in deployment stage today in the 200 petabyte range. Now, this has complete support for the major public cloud players and is an ideal platform to create hybrid cloud solutions. Now, the deployment options for this range from software only. So we started, our genesis was as a software-defined storage, but we do have an option of a Cloudian appliance, which comes prepackaged, preloaded with the software. And we also offer a consumption model based on our own consumption offering, as well as we are part of VMware's vCloud Director consumption offering. The use cases that we support are the main ones are focused around data protection. So backup, archive, ransomware protection are really big use cases for us. We have use cases in the media and entertainment industry as well as a capacity storage layer. And we also service the surveillance and security space. And finally, Internet of Things, big data, especially on the Splunk Smart Store perspective, is another huge area of focus for Cloudian. So getting specifically to the topic at hand today, right? Ransomware. So how does ransomware get addressed by Cloudian? As you heard from Steve, the way Veeam implements ransomware protection is through the S3 object lock, which was released last week in version 10 for Veeam. Cloudian released their support for S3 object lock in 7.2 release, which happened in December of 2019. Now we have native support for the S3 object lock, which is our way of doing worm. Worm is a concept which stands for write once and read many, and this is the model used by everybody to ensure that your data in storage is immutable or unchangeable. Right. Once the objects are written in worm format, they are made unchangeable for a certain period of time that can be defined at the time of bucket creation itself. Right. In Cloudian HyperStore, we support two modes of protection, and those are, the first one I want to talk about is the governance mode. This is in full compliance with how AWS S3 implements object lock. In the governance mode, this is the lesser restrictive mode for data protection. Objects are locked for a certain period of time and they are protected against rogue actors. However, if you have a user with privileged access, they can potentially go and clear out the system, delete the system. Think about system admins that are protecting against the use of object lock for development and test perspective, DevOps perspective, and or internal usage. This is not something that you would deploy for ransomware protection in your enterprise. The next mode is the compliance mode. Now, this is the important mode, and this is the mode that is the more stringent data protection mode that specifically works on the ransomware protection side. This is also the mode that is supported on the Veeam side, and based on which we have our ransomware solution with Veeam. In this mode, you typically have the root access disabled, and deletes are completely disallowed, even for privileged users. Now, the root access being disallowed is not necessarily an application feature. It has to be a storage level feature, and I'll get into that perspective later. But for a full solution, you need to have some of that as well, right? So as we're talking about root access, I do want to get into the hardened solution that we offer with HyperStore, right? As mentioned, it is not enough to have implementation of object lock in the storage if hackers can actually compromise storage at the system level. What does that mean, right? It means that if a rogue actor, let's say it's a hacker that can get into your enterprise system, they've already bypassed your security in certain ways. They've probably gone through firewalls and what have you. It's not unheard of that they can even hack into your root system. And why hackers? It could even be a rogue actor within your own premises. If you have an admin that can actually have root access, they can bypass all the security settings that you have with object lock and what have you, and execute deletes or what have you with your data at the OS level. At that point, object locking will do you no good, right? There are strict requirements by regulatory organizations to actually qualify worm-based system. So if you are looking for an for a ransomware solution, as I mentioned, Forrester talks about it being a backup with a worm-based solution. So what really constitutes a worm-based storage system, right? There are strict requirements for what qualifies as worm. So SEC Rule 17A4 F specifies that for a worm-based system, even the root access should be disabled and you should not be able to delete data from there. Cloudian has spent over the last 2 years getting certified by third-party government-based agencies on specifically these regulations. We are certified for US security certification, SEC Rule 17A4, FINRA Rule 4511, CFTC Regulation 1.31, and we're certified worm compliant by these organizations. That makes us a hardened solution for ransomware protection, right? We actually ship in the hardened mode, we ship HyperStore with system level security features like secure shell, integrated firewall, RBAC IAM access controls, and completely lock up the system at the root level so that even if a rogue actor can somehow gain access to your system and even try to get root access, they won't be able to. And your implementation for ransomware protection with object lock, Veeam and Cloudian is completely foolproof. Okay. Quickly, very high-level overview of the workflow of what it looks like for a Veeam Cloudian solution for ransomware protection. Steve will go into more details of this, but it's pretty simple. Creating a ransomware protected workflow, very, very straightforward. Cloudian connects as a scale-out backup repository to Veeam backup and replication via the cloud tier, something that Steve talked. It came in version 9.4 update, 9.5 update 4, I believe. Veeam initiates the backup in this case, and during the backup initiation, you get a window and the admin can actually specify through the backup workflow that it needs to be an object lock backup, and you also get a dialog box to specify the amount of time that this backup is going to be locked up for. Now this on the back end automatically will create a locked bucket on Cloudian HyperStore in the compliance mode with the policy and on the time frame that we specified on the Veeam side. those will be automatically inherited on the Cloudian side, and your bucket is created in object lock mode with that specific time frame. The backup is now immutable, and even if you do get a ransomware attack, they're not going to be able to encrypt or change or delete the data, and you can always have a clean copy to restore. Steve will walk you through this workflow in actuality. And Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Amit. So yeah, Amit said, now let's just go into the solution in a little more detail. As Amit mentioned, the first part of this process is the backup job. The backup job will be initially targeted to what we call the performance tier, which is a repository or an extent inside of a scale-out backup repository, which we call SOBR. Then that data will either be copied or moved, or both, to the capacity tier, and I'll explain that in a couple seconds. So as far as the configuration, as you know, Amit said, it is very simple and straightforward. First, you would create your object storage repository and point it to your Cloudian HyperStore device. Once that's done, then you would go into your SOBR configuration, and you would pick what we call the capacity tier, which is the same thing as the cloud tier. You would go in and you would say, okay, I want to take the data from this high-performing performance tier, and I want to send it to the object storage. So you select the box, pick your Cloudian HyperStore as a target, and now you have your two choices. You can either copy the backups immediately to the object storage, as I said, and that will satisfy the 3-2-1 rule, or you could move them based upon a particular time. Again, this is what we had in 9.5.4, or you can do both. Why would you do both? So in this example, as soon as my backup files are created, I'm sending them off to my Cloudian device. And after 14 days, I'm going to prune the data off of my high-speed performance disk. I'm not going to actually move anything because, well, it's already been moved out there. So in that case, it's cleaning up my high-speed performance disk. And lastly, at the bottom, you see the encryption. We highly recommend that you select this. You encrypt the data when you send it to the object storage. In this case, you pick a password hint, and off you go. Now, to set up the immutability, as Amit said, that's done when you create the bucket. So when you go into your Cloudian device and you create your bucket, you have your, you select it here from Veeam. In this example, it's immutable 1. And then you can create your bucket, or choose the bucket you created. I'm sorry, the folder that your backup files are going to go to. And what happened here was kind of funny. When I was creating these slides, I said, immutable 1, that's kind of a lame name. I want to create something, a little bit different, so I went to change it. Yeah, I couldn't. And because I took the default as 30 days, I still can't. So I was going to create a new bucket, like, can't touch this or something, something cute, but, we're stuck with immutable 1. But you can see there, so, you create your bucket, you pick it, you create your folder, you select it, and then you click the checkbox and you say, how long do I want to keep this data immutable for? Now, if you assigned that when you created the bucket on the Cloudian side, you definitely want to make sure that those numbers match, I should say. So, as Amit said, we protect the data not only from ransomware, but the malicious actors. Now we'll call it the malicious admin in this case. So, as Amit mentioned, we do use compliance mode. So, if someone decided that they were going to leave, and on their way out, well, they were going to delete your production data, and then to make sure they really stuck it to you that they were going to delete your backup data, they could try to go into Veeam and say, all right, delete all the backups. Well, you get this error message saying, no, I can't do that. They're immutable. So now the smart admin is going to say, well, I'm going to go turn immutability off. Or it could be the person trying to change their slides. But in this case, you go in and you say, all right, I want to turn off immutability. Again, it's going to say, nope, can't do it. Immutability is on. That's it. So again, not only do we protect from, the malware, the ransomware, we can protect from this, we call it inside attack, but we could also say, someone making a mistake. Now we'll go through and show an example of how the immutability in the locking actually works. So let's say on Monday I do a backup. Those objects get sent over to my Cloudian, and they're locked. On Tuesday I do another backup. Objects get sent over. In this case C. It's going to get locked, and the same thing's going to happen on Wednesday. Now, come Thursday, because I chose 3 days for my lock, well, once that 3 days has been achieved, now the lock on Monday can be released. And again, if the data has gone through its retention, it can also be expired at that point, and Veeam will delete it out of the storage. And the same thing is going to happen on a Friday. So on Fridays, now Tuesdays is going to be eligible to be unlocked. So very straightforward, follows the very simple process, and very set up through 3 or 4 mouse clicks. So with that, do we have any questions?
So the first question we have is, I see that you can't delete the backup data from Veeam's GUI, but what about Cloudian's or from the OS command line? Steve or Amit?
Sure, I can start with that one. Well, certainly, as Amit alluded to, Cloudian, prevents the data from being deleted, not only from the command line, but from their GUI as soon as you enable that object lock. And as you mentioned, what's kind of cool, the way they implemented it is, once you license or turn on this object lock on the Cloudian side, as Amit said, it puts the OS in a secured shell that doesn't allow you to, go behind the scenes and delete the data from the command line. So yes, it does lock it.
Okay, so we do have another question. Is the communication channel between Veeam Backup Server and HyperStore device secured? So either Amit or for Steve.
Actually, can I add to the previous question a little bit? So Steve already mentioned that the Cloudian device will actually prevent you from deleting the data. And as I mentioned, right, this particular capability is part of the Veeam certifications that we do. We are verified compliant for the non-read-writable, non-erasable storage requirement of SEC 17A4. I'm reiterating this a few times here because we believe this is one of the key requirements for ransomware protection. And we actually started in Cloudian getting certified for SEC 17A4, CFTC, and the FINRA rules. The reason for these were not really ransomware, mostly being able to work in the federal space, and these were requirements already there. Now, these are working very, very nicely for the ransomware protection certifications and the Veeam certifications. And, you can rest assured that even if you have rogue actors that can access, get into your network and access the systems at the root level, they're not going to be able to do anything because root access is going to be locked down and completely inaccessible to them. Other solutions will fail at this because most of the storage platforms that we know that will implement object lock, we don't believe are yet secured at the system level, and that is going to be one of the key differentiators of the solution. Sorry about that. You can.
Yep. No worries there. So I'll just go back to the second question there. So as a reminder, the question is the communication channel between the Veeam Backup Server and HyperStore device secured? I don't know who wants to take that.
I'll take that one. Yeah, absolutely. So when you go and create your object storage repository, Veeam requires that connection be through HTTPS using SSL, so that it protects that data going between Veeam and the Cloudian device. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we strongly recommend that you enable the encryption as well during that process.
Right, and at Cloudian level, we do support data in motion and data in rest encryption, and we work very well with Veeam on that.
Perfect. So I have another question from the audience. The question is, will I lose any storage savings on the HyperStore in comparison to regular disk?
Sure, I'll take that one again. Sure. Yeah. So No, you won't lose any storage savings because Veeam will write to the HyperStore using deduplication. So, you'll see the same dedupe savings as you would go into traditional block or file storage.
Also, from a Cloudian perspective, the cost of storing in Cloudian is extremely low. We come in as low as half a cent per gig per month. Of course, it depends on how much data you're going to put in there. So even from a regular storage comparison, you are looking at a very economical storage layer, and along with the deduplication that Veeam is going to provide, you're going to have a very efficient system out there.
Perfect. So there's another question. The question is, what about European security certifications?
I'll actually take that. So this is something that I had on my slides. I did not get into in detail. So we are completely certified on the US side for the security certification, and we are well underway for European certification. Now, the European certifications are different for different countries. We are working with KPMG cert teams, and they are assisting us. In fact, we're probably just a couple of weeks away. Never said anything specific on these, but we are very close to getting the German commercial and tax regulation certifications around DW PS880. And there's also a Swiss obligation that they're assessing us against. I cannot even pronounce those alphabets or characters in there, but let's just say there are Swiss regulations that we will also be certified again. If you look at the gamut of what this means, is it's going to be very similar to what we have on the US certification side, and everything is going to ensuring that the system is worm capable and completely able to do immutable solution.
Perfect. Thank you. I want to thank Amit and Steve for joining us, and please be sure to check out the attachments for more information, and have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.